Welcome back to the Sure Sales Group Show, episode 72, and I'm back with my good friend Matthew Neuberger, who just wrapped up the goal setting workshop in 2019. It was bigger and better than ever. Here on the show, we talk about real estate, sales, negotiation, marketing, entrepreneurship, buying, selling, renting, investing, and what it's taken us to grow from 2 employees to 20, from 30 million in sales to 130 million in sales in the last few years. Thanks for watching. So Matt, the goal setting workshop, you've done it many years in a row now. The reviews this year were the best I've seen. Can you tell us a little bit about what you did, how it went off, and if you weren't there, what you missed?
Yeah, well, it was our biggest event ever, but what happened at the event was pretty cool. It was the first time we had a gold medal Olympian live in the audience. We had the founder of a major bank in Baltimore involved, and we even had Jerry Sandusky there, and they were all sharing sort of how they got to where they were, helping our audience understand there are lots of different ways of getting to your goals. Right. So from that perspective, it was eye-opening to see that there's more than one way to get to your goals.
Right. Well, goal setting has almost become a cliche thing in the business world. Everyone talks about goal setting. What's kind of the Neuberger and Company spin on it? Because you've walked a lot of people through goals. What are the kind of key things that you find really drives them home and makes it valuable for people?
Well, I think the statistics kind of speak for themselves. I think we all kind of know that 92 to 98% of the population has no goals. Right. What a lot of people don't understand is why they don't have goals, right? If you're not successful, you're not happy, you're not getting what you want out of life, the problem is you're not aligned. In other words, you're not exactly clear on what you want, you're not sure why you want it, so you're kind of defaulting to either social norms, like what other people want for you. I always ask a question, do you remember the day you picked your religion?
No.
Right. That's conforming to somebody else's goals. Now, you may love your religion and it may be the religion your family has had forever, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But the question is, we can't even see that we're constantly trying to please other people, and that gets in the way of us setting clear goals for ourselves. So a lot of people wake up at 40, 50, 60, whenever, and they realize, I'm not doing what I want for me. I'm doing it because I think that my friends, my family, the people I care about will accept me. And so you're not really happy, but you're not unhappy. And so we wake people up to that fact and help them set really clear what they want goals and sort of put aside everybody else's goals for them and just really focus on what they want.
So how do you wake people up to that? Because that seems like a pretty deep psychological shift. Sure. So like, what's the tactic there? Like, yeah, he's describing me. Like, I do all these things. I don't even realize my parents wanted me to be X, Y, and Z, and I got all this pressure, and I'm not going after what I want to go after. How do you break the mold there? It seems like a tough putt.
Yeah, it is. It is for a lot of people. And the way you wake them up is you ask them, what is it that you should stop doing next year? It's not getting you happy. The things you're doing that are not making you happy, what are those things? And it's the first time a lot of people are thinking about it. If you think about it this way, if you're not happy with your job, what do? You go home at the end of the day and you have a drink.
Yeah, and bitch about it.
And complain about it. Right. But nothing changes, right? So what we have to do is actually make them aware and make them stare at the thing that they're saying they should stop doing. And usually, it's stuff that doesn't necessarily mean they have to quit their job, but it means there's things they have to stop doing, people they have to stop spending time with, things that are probably not productive or ultimately lead to their happiness. Binge eating is not going to make you happy. Right. Taking flack from people at work that you shouldn't be, not going to make you happy. Those are just simple examples, right? Yeah. But it could be part of my job I freaking hate. I don't want to do that anymore.
Right.
Well, then you got to go talk to your employer and say, you know what, I hate this part of my job. I still want to work here. I just want to do more of this and less of that. See, the thing is if you're not happy, you're out of integrity with yourself because you're not listening to what your gut, your intuition is saying, you know what, I really like that, but I don't like that. Most people don't go to sleep at night listening to their gut and saying, you know what, this is the stuff that makes me happy and fulfilled, and this is the stuff I hate doing. They just simply, same day, get a drink, repeat, 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 repeat. And someday they wake up and they're 65 and they're like, oh, shoot.
Don't be that person who wakes up at 65 and says, oh, shoot. And one of the things I caught there was you talked about identifying things you don't want to do. I think most people, when talk about goals, they say, I want to do this. I want to sell this much. I want to buy this thing or go on this trip or accomplish this, like this to-do list. And I think what you just said was it's as important, if not more important, to have maybe a not to-do list, things to stop doing that are stopping you from fulfilling these things.
Right.
So that's an interesting angle on it. It's like, hey, there's a to-do list and there's a not to-do list. And you got to get aligned with yourself.
Well, if you think about it, you sort of have two columns in life, things that give you energy and things that sap your energy. And you've got to get very clear on what those things are and then identify them and say, I'm not going to do those things anymore. Resolve to get rid of those things in the future. But look, it all comes down to, at the very beginning of the session, what we're challenging people with is the idea that it's like salespeople. You have got to sell yourself on something better than what you currently have. You know, Steve Jobs said, you can only connect the dots in the progress in your life looking backwards. You can never connect the dots looking forward. Right. The thing that prevents most people from setting a goal that's unrealistic is they say, I don't know how I'm going to get there. And if you try to figure out how you're going to get there, you will fail. Because everything is constantly changing around you. So whatever plan you put in place today, and I'm not saying don't have a plan, don't misunderstand, but if you think the plan you start off with is going to be the plan you finish with, you're crazy. Right. Because you are setting yourself up to fail and prove that having a better life isn't possible. Instead, you have to be flexible with your plan, but absolutely sold on the result. And you'll get your result. And said another way, and simply is we tend to way overestimate what we can get done in a year, but underestimate what we can get done in 3. Our brains are so in the right now in terms of, can I get instant gratification, that we have no concept of the idea of compounding and how if I do a little habit today and do a little habit tomorrow, if I look back in 2 days, I can't tell any difference. Right. But if I do that habit for 3 years, I'm gonna have whatever I want.
That makes perfect sense. You know, when we're doing our goals for like the real estate thing, I remember explicitly we're like, we got to like 80 million in sales. This was maybe 3 or 4 years ago. And we're thinking, it's like, how can you possibly double from here? Like, oh my God, we made it. We made it. 80 million, right. That's a lot. Like getting to 100 million is like and it is a major accomplishment. We're very proud of that. We had no idea that in 3 short years now, we just did 150 million. If you would have told me that 3 years ago, I'd have been like, okay, that's pie in the sky stuff.
But if somebody's watching this, and let's say right now they're living in a house that is unsatisfactory to them. It's a nice house. And by any standard of their family, it would be considered to be a wonderful home and certainly in line with what the family has done over the years. Right. But in their mind, they're entertaining, you know what I'd really like? I'd like a house on the water. I'd like a pool. But that's $1.5 million for my budget, you know, and I have a $250,000 house. Part of what they value in you is one, they've got to take massive action and sell their freaking house. Right. It's the first thing they've got to, because if you take that action, you can sell it for them. But if they take that massive action now, it's going to force them on that journey to the bigger home. Maybe they have to rent for a little while. Maybe, I don't know, maybe they extend themselves a little bit. But the fact of the matter is, if you put yourself in that mind frame where you're an owner of a $1.5 million house, or whatever the value of the house, doesn't really matter, then you're going to start acting like a person that has a $1.5 million house.
Right? But everyone gives up on it. It's fun to think about. You might be thinking right now, yeah, it'd be cool to own a $1.5 million house. It can't happen, won't happen. I make whatever, $100K salary. That's not going to happen. But
that's because you're focused on right now and not where you're going to be in 3 years, and you don't have a goal. Now you're out of alignment because you're wishing and wanting things, and what you're doing is you're going to teach yourself over time to settle. As an agent, that's not your job to allow people to settle. But here's the thing, when a young person buys a house, is it possible that their income's going to go up over time?
Most of the time, I'd say it does.
What's the average amount of time a person owns a home?
I think the latest statistic's about 7 years.
Okay, 6 and 7 years is what I've heard.
Right.
Are they going to upgrade? So if a 20-something in 7 years is going to buy a house, is that house going to be bigger, better the next time around?
Almost always is.
Okay. For those people that were to stay in the same area, they probably say to themselves, I wish I would have gone bigger earlier. right? But I was so focused on the now, and I wasn't thinking about where I was going to be in 3 years. And
People are scared of leverage. I will say that. And what's crazy is even through the history of time, real estate's performed very well. And we don't need to get into all like the logistics of real estate as an investment and as an asset class. But even the people who bought in 2007 and 8 who got whacked, if you just held it and you wrote it out, you're back up.
Yeah.
Even in Baltimore, where the market's not compared nationally, maybe
Right.
not as hot, it's still very good.
Right. And it's not like Bitcoin where you can just make it up out of thin air. There's only so much land, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So,
and you have to live somewhere.
right, you have to live somewhere. So the fact of the matter is we all know how it works out. But my point is that if they're working with an average agent, the agent is going to say, what do you want? They tell the agent, and then they go try to find that. In your particular case, your goal is to unlock their goals. I think the real leverage is getting them leveraged on where they want to be in 3 years. Let's think about it another way, right? What are the frictional costs of buying and selling a home, right?
Right. There's
So if they don't
there.
think that way, it's going to end up costing them more in the long term. So my point is, until they're sold on their goal, whoever sells them on their goal, they're going to be stuck in that right now thinking. And as a result, they're not going to get what they want. So it's really important that people are thinking about my destination, where I want to be, and then freaking focus on it. And if you stare at something long enough, you become, right? That's just it.
You are what you think about. It's a famous line.
That's
you become
it.
what you think about all day long.
Yeah. And what I think is, and as long as we're throwing quotes around, one of the things that Eckhart Tolle talked about was be an observer of your thoughts. Most people, they have a thought, I really like a nice restaurant. Forget it, it's not reasonable. They censor themselves before they even entertain it fully. They won't even allow themselves to stare at that goal that they want because in their mind, they're going to fail and they're not willing to take that risk. So from our perspective, what we're doing is we're getting them to get really clear on what that goal is, because the number one thing we see is people's goals are too vague. And then the second thing is that they very quickly come up with a million reasons why that goal isn't reasonable. And so if we get them to stare and focus at that goal and figure out what to separate, what are all the thoughts, the friends, the problems, the detractors, what are all those things they got to get away from? And let that goal grow a little bit. Give it a little sunlight. They can have that thing, and usually in less time than they think, right?
Oh, I totally agree with it. And being an observer of my own thoughts, I'm getting some training right here live on camera. I'm thinking, I don't really approach the process thinking, I always say this, and for everyone on our team, we want you to get exactly what you want. And we want to be the proxy to help you there if it's going to be a real estate transaction. We're very good at that. So I always say our goal is A, to get you exactly what you want, and B, to have you say nice things about us on the internet, which means we have to do a good job, maybe some unexpected extras, go above and beyond.
Yeah.
But what I don't do, and what I would like to do, and while you're saying it, I was thinking that's a really good idea, is maybe go a little deeper with our clients who we spend a lot of time with these people.
Yeah.
They're good people in different industries. One thing I love about my job is I'm meeting all kinds of different people who do all kinds of different things. And going deeper with them on say, hey, what do you really want? Say, hey, this is your house, but where do you see yourself in 5 years? That's a powerful question.
Yeah.
People aren't getting asked that often. Do you have any real estate goals of where you want to be when your family grows?
Here is the question that we need to ask. And this is something I've learned from observing multi-millionaires and billionaires, which to me, that's my classroom, right? So the people I am spending time with is, if I want to be those things and I want to be fulfilled financially and spiritually and mentally and in every aspect of life, I have to look at the people that are performing at the top level. Here is what people at the top level are constantly thinking about. You want to guess first? What do they constantly think about?
Well, I'll take a guess. I'd imagine they're constantly thinking about how to improve and simultaneously how to cap any downside. Because a lot of these people have already made, the people you're talking about, millionaires, billionaires, I'm sure they have pretty good hedges about how not to lose it, and then also how to grow it and improve. So that's my guess.
So quick story and then the answer. So a good friend of mine, Fred, very successful person, 2 private planes, a bunch of different houses. If you look at all the trappings of life, he's got them.
Right.
But what amazed me about him is his philosophies on life and how quickly he can make a decision about something, even if it's an unpopular decision. Mm-hmm. And here's what's really amazing. He has a saying. He says, look, he said, I'm living my life for this 85-year-old. And every day I get up, I think about, is that 85-year-old going to be proud of me? And that 85-year-old is me when I'm 85. So the question everybody needs to ask themselves is, who do I want to become? Not what am I going to get today? How am I going to get what I want? What's my short-term goal for 1 year? But you've got to start with this idea of, when this thing's over, what do I want to become? What am I at that point?
That's powerful. And you can break that down into anything. It reminds me of even just basic sales training, or maybe not so basic, but some of the advanced stuff too, is you had to begin with the end in mind.
That's it, baby. That's it.
We came and we had this meeting, I said, Matt, I want to get you back on camera. I like talking to you. This is one of the things that energizes me. Boom. The end in mind is, hey, we're going to chop this up, make some cool content. Down to anytime we're selling someone, begin with the end in mind. And then I like that big overarching thing, and it ties back into the goals, is if you really challenge yourself to ask yourself, what do I want to become? That's a question I'd venture to say not many people have really asked themselves and actually thought deeply about it. It's easy to do it real quick and say, okay, cool, that's a fun question. I like that, ooh. But if you really think about it, I think you're going to pull out some wisdom for yourself.
Yeah, and it's said in lots of different ways. Some people say, Matthew McConaughey says, my hero is me in 10 years or 15 years. However you want to say it, the important thing that you said is really the point. It's go away and think about it.
Right.
Don't feel like you have to come up with an answer in 30 seconds and then that's it.
Right.
It's actually something you need to contemplate.
Right.
And it needs to be something you believe. It has to be something that has integrity, which means you feel fully aligned with the answer. And you feel like that's the reason you're here on planet Earth. And when you're done, and by your standards, not anybody else's, that is a life well lived. That's where it all starts. Then how much do I want to sell? What kind of a house do I want to live in?
Right, exactly.
How do I want to impact other people, right? What do I want to do to contribute? Yeah. But people are constantly asked and confronted with these questions, and they come up with socially acceptable answers that aren't who they want to become. They're out of integrity, so they half-ass it. When they half-ass it, they really don't succeed, and they prove that as much as I try, it's not going to help. And they end up lying to themselves and everybody else so that they can be accepted. I don't think anybody says, you know what? I want to become a person who's socially accepted. I don't think anyone says that.
So you're going to argue that's what most people do.
Look, we had our event, right? We had the largest record audience, but there's always that small percentage that complain.
Oh yeah.
And say, well, the food was cold or the seats were hard or whatever it was, right? And I got to be okay understanding that I'm going to get those complaints and I'm not going to give a shit because I accomplished who I want to become, which is I made more lives better in that room for that day that I had those people, and even in the days leading up. And if somebody's not quite ready, it just means they're not ready. It doesn't mean we failed.
Right.
And it doesn't mean I'm going to change my mission. It doesn't mean next year I'm going to order softer seats for everybody in the room. Right?
Exactly.
It doesn't mean I'm going to stand at the oven and make the bread, right?
Well, like you always said, whenever I come to Matt when I'm in some of these binds with growing a business or talking about sales, and here's what you said to me one time. And I called you to ask for the quote again so I could remember it. You said, hey, some will, some won't, so what, move on.
Right.
Which is you can't get tied up in, like what you said, you have to be okay with people not accepting your shit, essentially.
Well, you've got to be okay not being accepted by everybody. If you want to live your life on your terms, you have to realize there are going to be people that have a different opinion. Until they truly understand and get where you're going, they're going to criticize.
Right.
Think of any brand you love. Let's go online right now and we'll look, and there's going to be people on social media criticizing that brand. But in some cases, these are trillion-dollar companies.
Yeah.
If you're going to put yourself out there, you better be ready for some critics. And I think that's the thing that we have to prepare people for. When you go back and you share this with the people that love you, you may make them feel a little uncomfortable. And then you're going to have to decide in that moment, am I going to buy into being accepted, or do I need to get this path and have people understand it eventually?
Right.
Right. As long as you're doing something that's good and ethical, right? If you're doing something that's bad, then it's a different story.
So that's pretty powerful. So at the end of this goal setting workshop, you go through. You have some amazing speakers.
Yeah.
You take them through the process.
Yeah.
They're writing things down. I know you're big on the vision boards. You've been doing that forever. I'm sure there's some around here we can shoot.
All of them on the wall back there.
how does it kind of wrap up? And what's your kind of, as we wrap up here today, what would you want to leave people with on A, the importance of goal setting, the right way to do it, and when you send them on their way, because you know what happens. At any seminar, at any training you do, you've trained tens of thousands of people locally and internationally. You know no one implements this stuff. Or not, I shouldn't say no one, the vast majority. They hear it, they understand it, they choose not to do it.
Right.
How do we change them?
Well, first of all, you have to understand that goal setting is a skill. Most people don't have the skill set. They try it. It's super uncomfortable, so they quit. And their friends also don't set goals, so they feel more accepted. It's a scary thing to put yourself out there in terms of what you could have, because you may not get it, and your brain's constantly telling you that, right? Most people, your internal critic takes over when it's time to set goals. You have to recognize that's happening and shut it up. Say, thank you very much, appreciate the thought, but no thank you, right? But the other thing you have to know is just understand that it's a skill. If you suck the first time you set a goal, that just means you learned a wrong way to set the goal, just like anything else in life, right? But you have to understand that you're not supposed to be good at it. It takes constant practice. We talked about the idea that you really have to understand who you want to become.
Right.
Why I say that is because it's important that you attach your identity. This is important, so you may have to loop this a couple of times.
Write it down.
You must, if you want to attach that goal, if you want that goal to happen, you have to attach your ego, your identity to that thing. So somebody that says, as an example, I should try and stop smoking. Have they attached their identity to stop smoking? No. As a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure if I just pushed some cigarettes across the table, they would smoke those cigarettes, right? They just would, because their identity isn't attached to stopping smoking. But if I ask somebody that used to smoke, would you like a smoke? And their identity is they're not a smoker, they're going to say, I don't smoke. They don't say I'm quitting or I'm trying to cut back. They say, with identity, with 100% conviction, physiologically, the tone of their voice, the words they use, I am not a smoker. When they use that I am as a preface to anything they say after, their identity is attached to the thing. I'm an owner of a $1.5 million home. Do I own it today? No, that's okay, but that's my identity. I will.
Right.
I run a successful business. I am the top salesperson in my organization. I am, whatever it is.
You have to have the courage to speak it out loud, and I think that's why people get so afraid, because what if they don't get it? Then they feel like a failure.
Well, if they don't attach their identity, it's because they're fighting for a story about why they can't have it. No one in their family has had it. They don't have the skill set. They're not smart enough. They don't have the resources. They don't have the right friends. They don't have the right connection. Whatever it is. I mean, you started with nothing, man.
I had good family and friends.
You had a good family. It's a good thing you said that. They may have had a comment or two.
Yeah, they're not in business. They're more like pharmacy, science people.
But what I mean is nobody said, you know what, Andrew, here's a business that's very successful. Why don't you take over and start running the business? Right?
Right. That would have been nice.
That would have been nice. However, you probably wouldn't be the guy you are today. But here's the thing. Some people are holding on to that story so much, and so what we ask people during the session is, what stories are limiting your success? What stories are you telling yourself that limit your success? Because those stories are true in their mind, and they will make them true over and over again, right? If my story is, no one in my family's ever made more than $50,000 in a year, and I believe that's my story too, I will consistently do action that produces $50,000 a year. If I get fired, I'll go get another $50,000 job. Fair?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay. So that's usually what people do. But the other side of that is I attach an identity. I say, no, $50,000 is unacceptable. Right? The house I live in is unacceptable. You know, we all know that you are the sum total income averaged of your 5 closest friends.
That's another one to write down.
So, no, I should change my friends, because all of my friends support $50,000 a year thinking. But a lot of times when we hire people here where I'm working with somebody in your capacity, the first thing I have to say is, who are you hanging out with? Because that creates your identity, because we, as humans, we have a tribal instinct that is so strong we don't even see it. So you have to be able to understand that either you have an identity of where you're going to be in the future, even though you may not be able to connect all the dots, or you have a story.
About why you can't.
Right. And the craziest thing, people will fight for their stories of limitation. They'll fight for them. And I will work with them to the point at which they're fighting me. And they're showing me that they want that story more than they want the success they said they want.
And what do you do at that point? At some point you got to cut people loose. Like, hey,
No, you do.
Some will.
Some won't. So what? Move on.
That's all.
And
right.
so you have to be willing to let those people experience more of it with a higher degree of awareness. And look, it is unnatural and a scary thing. So I'm not sitting here and saying that people that struggle in setting goals are wrong, but you can't just say, what are your goals? And what are your bad belief systems? And get rid of the bad belief systems and have goals. You have to ease them in. You have to say, look, it's a skill. Start small.
You got to work on it.
Yeah. It's okay to be nervous. It's okay to there's like 5% of my audience who's sitting there just not talking to anybody and not making eye contact. And my message at the end is always this: you showed up. This is your first time. You showed up. Just keep showing up. Because if you're in this environment with all these people setting goals, at some point, you're going to feel really uncomfortable for not doing it, and you're going to start the process. And so the thing I can say is, for those of you who are uncomfortable, just start hanging out with people that have a bigger vision on life than you have, that make you feel uncomfortable for where you are. And if you do that, at some point, you're going to have to start setting goals. And you have to understand, anyone who's successful at a high degree does this.
Oh, 100%. And that's why I like hanging out with you guys and Chad and the other business owners and the people we spend time with, is they kind of operate on a different frequency from how they perceive things and how they attack what they're going after. And you're definitely one of those guys for me. So, people are going to wonder, Andrew, you're posting all this stuff with Matthew Neuberger, like you're a real estate agent. This guy does sales consulting and management consulting. Are you on his payroll or something? And you know what I'm going to say? Hey, look, here's a guy who essentially trained me for a long time, didn't ask for anything, saw a 22-year-old kid. You gave me the time of day, and you still do to this day. So I won't be able to pay it back. But this is my little token of appreciation to spread the message, because I think a lot of people get a lot out of this. And you know what I was thinking? You said, hey, the 5 people you spend the most time with, that's the average income. The only people I'm hanging out with are my wife, who doesn't work, and my 2 kids who are broke. So am I doing this wrong? Should I? Because I'm thinking, well, there's 3 people I spend time with.
Maybe your young kids are highly successful. I think that's fitting the goals of being a good family man, and that's who you want to be.
Yeah.
But at the same sense, we're hanging out here right now, right? And I think that you're hanging out with business owners. I think in a way, you're a dream manager for your clients, right? If I look at the way that you sell a house, it's different than most agents, because you're passionate about what you do. You're doing more than just saying, here's what this is. I think your clients get that you're passionate about having them see the potential and be a part of that potential. So I think that that's something that you're doing, and I think your clients are part of your network. If I'm not right, I would guess.
Oh yeah, people do business with people they already know, like, and trust. And one of the reasons we do things like this is because I just want to be out there, providing value. So yeah, the one thing I want for my clients, more than anything, is just to get them the result.
Right.
And we play a little game it's called show, don't tell. I can tell you everything you're supposed to do. Do this, do this, do this, do this. Here's the comps, do this. Here's where to price it. Here's what you need to buy. But I'd rather just show you. Like, here's what's happened in the past. Here's what we're doing now. Here's how I think if we do this right and take a strategic approach, this is going to give us the best odds of getting you what you want. So it's more of I look at myself as more of an advisor. Like, hey, it's your house, dude. You're living there. So whether I like the tile or not doesn't really matter. But I want to make sure you get a good deal. Because what I found is if you can help stuff money and equity into people's pockets, they really like that.
Yeah.
And if you can make the process smooth, where you can step up and confidently navigate something. And now, I'm telling you, a lot of times in these situations, when you're dealing with money in real estate, people don't like to talk about it, but you're talking about finances, you're talking about making a big purchasing decision.
Yeah.
People innately, you know this, because it's a whole class here on mindset and how you perceive money and how to talk about budget.
Yeah.
A lot of agents that we deal with, good people, decent salespeople, they can get really uncomfortable with that money conversation. So where I'm going with that is, we've done this a lot. We're selling.
And I'm just going to say, you guys are awesome at that. I think.
Well, it doesn't have to be awkward.
But it doesn't have to be awkward. But I'll say the reason I think you guys are awesome at it is because you understand who you want to become. If you understand who you want to become, then why in the world would you ever have a problem talking about money? But if I'm out of integrity, in other words, I don't know what my career in real estate's all about, and now I'm getting emotion, pushback, disagreement, discord with my client, and I don't know who I am, I'm not going to push back. You know who you are.
That's a good point.
That's why money's not a problem. You're there to solve a problem for your customer. So money has to be talked about, and openly with clarity.
Precisely.
And if you haven't sold yourself on where you're going, how are you ever going to deal with those conversations? You're going to lose every time. You're going to lose more than you win, and you're going to be average. So, and that's how sometimes people realize real estate's not their thing. They're not passionate. They don't care enough. They don't want the result. Some people are going to fall into the lesser hands of an agent like that. But
right.
When I'm buying or selling a house, I want to deal with an agent who knows their stuff is passionate and is going to disagree with me because they know what I ultimately want and they're passionate about getting me that result, not worried about the argument or disagreement we may have in the process.
Right.
So again, that comes back to the principle we talked about earlier. And again, I think a lot of people get into real estate because they think or hear it's lucrative. You're a successful guy.
Most people aren't, though. Do they hear that 87% of people fail and they think, oh my God, no, there's no ceiling. I can make as much as I want.
Right.
Do the math, times everything times 0.06. This is incredible.
Right.
But you know what they don't say? There's also no floor.
Right.
You can go into debt so fast. No one's going to give you anything.
Right.
Benefits, forget about it.
Well, it's funny, and I don't, this isn't a criticism on anybody, but people do that. I got into being a stockbroker right out of college because I heard people made a lot of money, but I freaking hated it. I hated it. Hated it. I don't know if I said hated it enough. I hate it. Now, no offense to anybody in the profession. I think it's a great profession, but you have to like what you do.
Right.
I remember I kind of blew it out. I was like the most successful person, but then I was like, it can't just be this. And I couldn't, I switched into the investment banking side because I couldn't sustain it because I didn't like it enough, right? And so that comes back to, it wasn't who I saw myself being when I grew up. I don't see this as my future. I'm getting out.
And you were making a lot of money, I imagine.
I was making more money than I thought I'd be making, but I looked around at the people that, were towards retirement, and I was like, I don't want to be them. It
Right.
just wasn't who I wanted to be. It wasn't that there was anything wrong with them. They were wonderful, great people with integrity, but it wasn't, I didn't see myself sitting around an office every day and just, sort of managing accounts. That wasn't my thing.
You weren't in alignment.
I wasn't in alignment, and I was smart enough to get out and say, it's not for me. I need to be doing something else.
So you got clear, understood you weren't in alignment, took action and changed.
It wasn't who I saw myself being. I saw myself having a greater impact, but at the time I didn't know what it was. And so for me, it was just, it's just not enough impact. And so.
That's what it was for you? You wanted to make more of an impact?
I needed to make more of an impact. It wasn't enough.
Well, in closing, I'll say, and this is one of your lines too, is if you want a better answer, you got to ask a better question. And sales is all about questions. At the end of the day, you're kind of looked at as a master salesperson, and they train sales in B2B, B2C, every capacity you can imagine. So I want you to leave the audience with a question. And you've given us a bunch of them to contemplate. Who do I want to become is a big one.
As much as you might think you know your people's personal goals, statistically, 99% of the companies that we work with that are already doing well, the management, the leadership, the owners do not thoroughly understand and align the individual goals of their employees with their organization. To do that properly, the question to you is can your people clearly articulate the vision for your company 10 years from now, 3 years from now, 1 year from now? Can they articulate that? Can they also articulate the mission of your business? In other words, you do X so that your customers can Y. Your employees can't, maybe yours can, but 99% of employees can't. They don't understand the near-term objectives. They don't understand what specifically they do to make those objectives happen. They don't clearly articulate the values, how to make a decision on behavior inside the company. And because they can't articulate that, they can't align with you, which means you're probably spending too much time, money, and energy on managing problems. So to the business owner, you must articulate your vision, your values, your mission, your strategy, your objectives, such that your people, if I went and talked to them, they could repeat it verbatim, okay? Now, to your employees, here's the message. Your employees must have very clear understanding of what those things are. They must understand the part they play. They must understand, if you're an employee and you want to get the most out of your life, 70% of your waking hours are spent at work. 70% of the time you are awake and moving around, you're working. So why shouldn't work be fun, communal, part of your goal? Right? It's not something you do in your off hours. No, when you're working, that you're fulfilling your goals while you're at work. You're happy at work. So that's an employer's responsibility, but the employee, you've got to be able to clearly articulate what your goals are around what you want out of life, extrinsic and intrinsic, meaning what are the feelings you want to feel every day? What is your primary emotion you want to experience every day, right? And then what are the things you want? Do you want a $1.5 million house, right? Do you want to be friends with Andrew? Whatever it is, right? Those things are really important, and you've got to be able to articulate them over and over again until you get it just right and it feels right, okay? And you've got to be able to talk about who you are in terms of your identity. The next thing you've got to do is you've got to identify where are there areas of conflict between work and your primary emotion, your happiness, and your goals. You need to involve your manager or the business owner in that conversation and say, hey, there are some places where we're out of alignment. In other words, if your business owner is saying, listen, I want everybody to, vacuum the office every day, and you hate vacuuming, then that's not going to be in alignment, right? So you have to be able to talk to your manager and open up a conversation where you're saying, here's where we're aligned, here's where we're not, here are the resources I need. And the last thing your manager needs to know if you report to somebody is what motivates you. Is it, most people would say, well, I think the answer would be money, but all the studies today are saying money is not the primary motivator, right? So is it accomplishment, achievement, recognition, competition? What's the thing that gets you going where time disappears and you're just having fun? And for everybody, that's different. So we have a same-page document. They can get in touch with you or us, and they can figure out how to get that document so they can answer those questions. But the primary question that I'd leave the employers with is, can you clearly articulate vision, values, mission, strategy, and objectives? And if you can't, if you care enough, go do that. And get it right. And work on it over and over again. This stuff is skill-based, not hey, I fill out a form and I'm done, right?
Right.
It's a constant work of art that you're constantly improving. And on the individual side, as an individual, it is your responsibility to know what motivates you. Because if you're not happy at your current job and you don't know what motivates you, guess what? You're going to go to another job, get the same pay, and deal with the same problem. And when you get to 60 or 85 or whatever the year is, and you're like, life was pretty mediocre, well, I mean, is that okay for you? So I'm hoping to just give you enough leverage right now. We talked about leverage earlier, so that you'll hopefully at the end of this answer the following questions. Who do you want to become? What experiences do you want to have? How do you have to grow as a person? What are you planning to give back? Because if you're a taker, I'm telling you, you're not going to be a happy person. Right. You've got to have ways you're giving back. Listen, I know, and I just today talked to our employees. I said, hey, listen, we're going to impact 10,000 lives minimum in the next 10 years. We're going to impact 50 interns. We're going to prevent child abuse in Baltimore City. These are things that we're going to prevent child trafficking, sex trafficking. We're going to help catch the criminals that do that. And that's all the stuff we're going to do to give back to the world. But we're going to impact 200 companies every year and a minimum of 10,000 people and make their lives better. Help them get the goals, what they want out of life, through fulfillment at work. That's who we're going to become. And if you're not there yet, it's okay, but you got to start somewhere. And what you have to do, lastly, is I'm just going to ask, what stories do you have to get rid of? What stories do you have to drop?
Right.
What are you telling yourself about yourself? You're not smart enough, you're not good enough. Look, we're all our worst internal critics. And the thing that I hate is seeing somebody just criticize themselves to a place of inaction. It's not necessary. What I know is, with the right focus and enough dedicated massive action, you can have whatever you want, as long as you'll get rid of that story. So I would say this, at the end of the day, business owners, get that aligned. If you're an individual, who do you want to become? And what story are you going to have to let go of in order to become that better version of yourself?
That's beautiful. That's a lot to unpack. I think on the individual level, as we're all sitting here with our own thoughts, and it kind of ties in, is you coach people on how to treat you, whether you know it or not. And it's by what you allow to happen. You don't get out of life what you deserve. You get what you tolerate, what you accept, what you negotiate.
Right.
So get clear on those things. It's going to serve you really well. And you know what I'm thinking? If all the agents on our team watch this, I'm going to have a lot of tough conversations coming. They're going to say, you know what? Actually, I don't like it when you do that. And that's fine. I'd like to know.
You would like to know,
I'd like to know. So Matt, thanks again, man. It's been a pleasure.
You got it.
Get a hold of these guys. It's still January. Make your goals and don't just fluff it. Do it the right way. Ask yourself the tough questions. Until next time.
Yeah. To your success.
To your success.